Chosen one, the smear campaign built to destroy you is falling apart, and the very people who once pushed it are being exposed. The ringleader, the one who fueled all the hatred toward you, just got shut down so hard that they lost every ounce of influence they once used to make others buy into their lies. Suddenly, nobody is agreeing with them. Justice is unfolding. What was meant to bury you is burying them instead. And you're getting a front row seat. Someone close to you absorbed everything you gave. This person sat in your presence like a student hungry for knowledge. Before you entered this person's life, confusion dominated every decision. Direction was unclear. Understanding of how things worked was limited. Then you showed up and everything changed for them. You invested deeply. You saw potential that hadn't been recognized. You taught different ways of thinking. You shared wisdom on how to speak with more power. You showed how to carry oneself with genuine confidence. The transformation was complete. This person went from speaking in simple terms to articulating complex ideas. Emotional reactions gave way to strategic thinking. Easy manipulation turned into recognition of manipulation tactics, all because of what you poured in. But while you were elevating this individual, someone else was watching, a puppet master who recognized that this person was gaining value through connection to you. This manipulator saw an opportunity. This predator understood that people who receive transformation often become loyal to their transformer, unless someone offers them something that looks even better, something that appeals to the part of them that still feels inadequate despite all growth. The puppet master approached your student carefully. Small conversations started, casual observations were made, innocent questions about you were asked. Tiny seeds of doubt were planted disguised as concern. Comments that seemed harmless were actually poisonous. The slow process of separating this person from loyalty to you had begun, and it worked. A choice was made. What the puppet master was offering looked more valuable than what you had given. Maybe it was financial gain. Maybe it was connections to people who could teach shortcuts. Maybe it was access to information that seemed powerful. Whatever it was enough. Enough to make your student forget where growth came from, enough to disregard who provided help, enough to become willing to betray you. And betrayal came, but not quietly. Active participation in your destruction began. Private information started being shared. Things you told in confidence became ammunition. Vulnerable moments you shared were weaponized. All of it became material that could create a narrative that would turn others against you. This is where everything that happened next was born. The puppet master didn't just want one person talking badly about you. A bigger vision existed. The goal was creating a movement. Multiple voices needed to say the same thing. It needed to look like independent sources were all arriving at the same conclusion about you. The psychology was understood. When one person says something negative, it's gossip. When many people say the same thing, it becomes truth in the minds of observers. What happened next can only be described as a coordinated performance. You know how one person starts singing and suddenly everyone joins in like rehearsal happened. That's exactly what happened with the lies about you. Your former student would share something with one person. The puppet master would share a slightly different version with another. And somehow all these people started singing the same song about who you were and what you supposedly did. Except nothing was miraculous about it. Everything was methodical. Everything was planned. Everything was coordinated. The puppet master made sure that the core message stayed consistent, even if details varied. An environment was created where being against you became social currency. Joining the chorus made someone part of the in-group. Singing along proved loyalty. Your former student was right there in the center, smiling, performing, playing the assigned role perfectly. This person sat there grinning like a student who just received praise from a favorite teacher. Except the lesson being learned was how to destroy someone who provided help. The grade being earned was approval from a manipulator. You watched this transformation happen in real time. You saw this person change completely. Different ways of talking emerged. Phrases you never heard before were being used. Perspectives that contradicted former beliefs were adopted. It was like watching possession occur, like a different person was emerging right in front of you. Maybe you tried to reach out, maybe questions were asked, but nothing could be heard anymore. Too deep in the performance had been gone. Then came the public execution. Because private gossip wasn't enough, the puppet master wanted spectacle. Everyone needed to see. Your name needed to be dragged through every possible space. So your former student started airing out what should have been private issues. Personal business started being told to people who had no right knowing it. Small conflicts were exaggerated into major offenses. You were painted as someone you never were. This is when others jumped in. People who barely knew you. People who had their own reasons to enjoy watching someone fall. Own verses to the song were added. Own stories were made up. It became a pile-on, a coordinated attack that felt like it was coming from every direction at once. You felt the isolation. You felt the confusion. You felt the betrayal. You couldn't understand how so many people suddenly had the same opinion. Your own memory started being questioned. Your own perception started being doubted. Because when enough people tell the same lie, it starts to feel like truth, even to the person being lied about. But something in you stayed alert. Something in you refused to accept the narrative. Something in you knew this wasn't real. So instead of fighting back, a different choice was made. You got quiet. You stopped defending. You stopped explaining. And you started watching, observing, studying. Notes were being taken on who participated and how and why. Information was being gathered while breakdown was assumed. Preparation was happening for something that couldn't be seen coming. If this message awakened something within you, hype this video for other chosen ones who need to hear this. Let's be clear about what kind of power was being wielded. This wasn't authentic influence. This wasn't earned respect. This was control through fear and manipulation. The puppet master built an entire empire on making people afraid to think for themselves. An atmosphere was created where questioning meant being ostracized, where disagreeing meant becoming the next target, where maintaining access required absolute loyalty to the narrative being pushed. And people fell for it. Belief actually existed that this person had real power. Actions were taken like this manipulator was someone special, someone untouchable, someone who could make or break reputations with a single word. The puppet master fed into this belief. Words were spoken with unearned authority. Decisions about who was in and who was out were made like ownership of people existed. Your former student was one of those people giving permission. Looking at the puppet master revealed everything desired. Confidence, connection, control. What wasn't seen was the emptiness underneath. What wasn't recognized was the insecurity driving all that bravado. So submission happened. Serving became the lifestyle. And in doing so, real power that was being built through connection with you was given away. Because real power doesn't require submission from others. Real power doesn't need people to be afraid. Real power is what you had, what you have, the ability to impact people without controlling them, the capacity to influence without manipulating, the strength to lead without dominating. That's what the puppet master saw in you. That's what created the threat. That's why removal was needed. Something crucial was understood. As long as you existed in the same spaces, people would eventually see the difference. Comparison would happen between authentic power and manufactured authority. Recognition would come that one person builds people up while the other tears them down. The puppet master couldn't afford that comparison, so you were made the villain. A story was created where you were the dangerous one, where removing you from the community was actually protecting people. Hating you was made to feel righteous. Opposition to you was positioned as a moral stance. People were convinced that speaking against you was actually brave, that joining the campaign was standing up for what's right. People's desire to be good was weaponized and turned against you. That's next-level manipulation. Your former student became one of the loudest voices in this manufactured morality. Speaking about you happened with such conviction, such certainty, such absolute belief that something noble was being done by destroying you. Others were gathered and positioning happened as a whistleblower, a truth teller, someone courageous enough to expose you, and people applauded, people validated, people gave the attention and approval that was craved, and that reinforcement made everything go harder. The puppet master was collecting information on everyone. Every person who joined the campaign revealed something about themselves: willingness to attack without evidence, eagerness to believe the worst about someone, capacity to join a mob. The puppet master was taking notes, storing information, gathering leverage. Because manipulators don't just use people once, collection happens so repeated use can occur. Your former student didn't see this. Thinking happened that alliance was being built, that position was being secured in a powerful network, that relationships were being invested in that would benefit long term. What was actually happening was creation of a surveillance file. Every private thing shared became potential blackmail material. Every vulnerable moment became ammunition that could be used later. Every time participation happened in tearing someone else down, more power was given to the puppet master, and the puppet master wasn't loyal to anyone. Everyone who participated in attacking you was expendable, tools, assets, pawns in a game where only the puppet master's interests mattered. The moment any of them became inconvenient or asked too many questions or showed signs of independent thinking, becoming the next target would happen. The same machine used against you could be turned on anyone at any moment. Something sick happened to the people who came against you. At first, opposing you was just something done, but over time it became who these people were. Identity got wrapped up in being anti-you. Sense of community came from shared hatred. Feeling of purpose derived from having a common enemy. You became the center of their world in the most twisted way possible. Conversations couldn't start without references to you. Own lives couldn't be talked about without bringing up what you supposedly did. Own wins couldn't be celebrated without comparing them to your perceived losses. Good feelings about themselves couldn't exist unless simultaneously putting you down. You lived rent-free in their minds, and realization of this didn't even exist. Or maybe it did, and that's why insistence kept coming that being over you was the reality. Your former student was particularly bad about this. An entire new personality was built around not being like you. Everything done was defined in opposition to what you supposedly represented. Choices were made specifically to prove difference from you. Alignments happened with people just because those people didn't like you. Beliefs were adopted that contradicted yours, even when those beliefs didn't align with actual values. Existence became reactive instead of authentic, and the puppet master encouraged all of this. Focus was kept on you constantly. Your name was brought up in conversations that had nothing to do with you. Questions were asked designed to make people rehash grievances. The most vicious commentary was rewarded with attention and approval. An environment was created where hating you was the price of admission, and maintaining that hate was the cost of staying. This is where things got really dark, because hate is corrosive. Damage doesn't just happen to the target. Destruction comes to the people who carry it. These people who made hating you their identity started becoming bitter, negative, suspicious. Trust couldn't exist for anyone because knowledge existed of how easily turning on you had happened. Vulnerability couldn't happen because weaponization had been witnessed. Authentic relationships couldn't be built because surrounding existed of people who bonded over destruction. The puppet master's inner circle became toxic. Everybody was watching everybody. Everybody was collecting information on everybody. Everybody knew that today's ally could be tomorrow's target. No real friendship existed. No genuine support was present. No actual love was felt. Just a bunch of people trapped in proximity by shared secrets and mutual compromise. And this was called community. This was called family. This was called loyalty. Meanwhile, you were out there building real connections. Real relationships were being formed based on mutual respect and authentic care. Value was being created instead of destroyed. Productivity was happening while destruction was their occupation, and that difference was becoming more obvious, even to people who were part of their group. Some members of the mob started having private doubts, started questioning if all this energy spent on hating you was really worth it, started wondering what could have been accomplished if focus had been on building own lives instead of tearing down yours, started feeling the emptiness of relationships built on negativity. But voicing these doubts couldn't happen, not in that environment. So carrying them silently happened, and those doubts grew heavier over time. The puppet master sensed the shifting energy, started working harder to maintain control, started creating new dramas to keep people distracted, started manufacturing new reasons for everyone to unite against common enemies. But exhaustion was setting in. Maintaining that level of manipulation requires constant effort. Keeping that many lies straight demands serious mental energy, and even the puppet master was getting tired. Your former student was getting tired too. Realization was happening that new life wasn't actually fulfilling, that performing hatred was draining energy, that the approval received from the puppet master felt hollow compared to the genuine love you had offered. But going too far to turn back easily had happened. Too much had been said, too much had been done, too many bridges had been burned. So going through the motions kept happening even as something inside was dying. There's always a moment when things shift, when carefully constructed facades start showing cracks, when narratives that seemed so solid begin falling apart. For this situation, that moment came when someone asked a simple question. A question that should have been easy to answer but wasn't. A question that exposed inconsistencies nobody had noticed before. And once that question was asked, others followed. It started with someone relatively new to the group, someone who didn't have the full history, someone who heard all the accusations about you and just wanted clarity on specifics. Concrete examples were requested, actual incidents were asked for, verifiable facts were desired, and suddenly everyone was scrambling, because the lies had been repeated so many times that assumptions existed about being based on something real. But when pressing for details happened, the details didn't exist, or contradictions appeared, or revelations came as exaggerations of minor moments. The puppet master tried to shut this down immediately. The questioner was accused of being naive, of being too new to understand, of probably being secretly loyal to you. An attempt was made to make asking questions feel like betrayal, but effectiveness didn't exist this time. Because other people had the same questions, other people wanted the same clarity, other people were starting to realize that accusations had been repeated without actually knowing if truth existed. Your former student panicked. Attempts were made to provide specifics. Tries were made to give examples that would satisfy the questions, but weakness was in the examples. Triviality was obvious. Exaggeration was clear. Descriptions of situations sounded bad until actual thought was applied, and then they sounded like normal conflicts being portrayed as catastrophic offenses. Things you supposedly said were talked about, but evidence couldn't be produced, and people noticed. People who had been mindlessly repeating the narrative started actually examining it. Critical thinking started happening instead of just accepting what had been told. Recognition came that participation had occurred in destroying someone's reputation based on gossip and groupthink rather than facts and evidence. And that realization hit different. That realization came with guilt, with shame, with horror at what had been part of. Some people immediately started distancing themselves, showing up to gatherings stopped, engaging in conversations about you stopped. Social media went quiet, processing was happening of what had been done, and desire existed to not do any more damage. These were the people with enough conscience left to feel remorse, the people who could admit, at least to themselves, that wrong had been done. But others doubled down. Defense mechanisms activated. Insistence came that accusations were true, even without evidence. Attacks happened on people who were asking questions. Those people were accused of being fooled by you, of being weak, of not understanding the full situation. More aggression came in certainty, because admitting doubt would mean admitting complicity, and egos couldn't handle that. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. The puppet master worked overtime trying to maintain control. New accusations were created. Fresh drama was manufactured. Attempts were made to refocus everyone's attention. But effectiveness wasn't happening the way it used to. People were seeing through the tactics now. Recognition existed of manipulation for what it was. The spell was breaking, and once a manipulation spell breaks, recasting on the same audience becomes impossible. Your former student was experiencing a full breakdown. Understanding couldn't happen of how this was occurring. Such certainty had existed, such conviction had been felt, such absolute sureness had been present that rightness existed and wrongness was yours. Now that certainty was crumbling and identity without it couldn't be found, entire identity had been built around opposing you. If that opposition was based on lies, then who was this person? What had been become? Conversations started happening with people outside the puppet master's immediate circle, people who knew you differently, people who had their own experiences with you that contradicted the narrative. And every conversation added weight to growing realization that deception had occurred. That being used had happened. That participation in something terrible had been the reality. That betrayal had been committed against someone who genuinely cared for someone who was only using. The guilt was crushing, the regret was overwhelming, the shame was all-consuming. Desire existed to reach out to you, but knowledge also existed of not knowing how. Wanting to apologize existed, but words adequate for what had been done didn't exist. Wanting to fix it existed, but understanding existed, that some things can't be fixed. Wanting to go back in time existed, but time only moves forward. So sitting with the wreckage of choices happened, and feeling the full weight of consequences became the reality. The puppet master's life started imploding. People were comparing notes and discovering patterns of manipulation that extended beyond just you. Former victims were coming forward with their own stories. Recognition was happening that this person had a history of creating campaigns against anyone who threatened control. The mask was fully off, reality was fully exposed, and accountability was coming from every direction. None of this happened because you fought back. None of this happened because you defended yourself. None of this happened because you sought revenge. This happened because truth has its own power. This happened because lies can't stand forever. This happened because divine justice operates on its own timeline and in its own way. You just had to stay out of the way and let it work. Consequences weren't just social. Going deeper than reputation existed. These people lost parts of themselves that can't be recovered. Innocence was lost. Trust was lost. The ability to look in mirrors and feel good about what's seen was lost. Peace was lost. Joy was lost. Freedom that comes from living with integrity was lost. Your former student lost the most. You were lost, and discovery is happening. That replacement of what existed can't occur. Attempts are being made. Looking for other mentors is happening. Other friends are being sought. Other people who might invest in the same way you did are being searched for. But effectiveness doesn't exist, because everyone can sense what capability exists of. Everyone knows betrayal happened of someone who loved them. Everyone understands that if it happened once, possibility exists for it to happen again. So keeping at arm's length happens. Friendliness might exist, but friendship doesn't. A difference exists between those two things. Time was also lost. Significant periods of life were consumed by this hate campaign. Time that could have been spent building, growing, learning, creating. Instead, spending happened on destroying. And time is the one resource that can never be gotten back. Those periods are gone forever. Opportunities that existed during those times have passed. The version of self that could have become during that period will never exist. Growth was traded for grudges. Progress was traded for participation in someone else's vendetta, and now nothing exists to show for it. The puppet master lost credibility that took significant time to build. People might have been fooled, but establishment had to happen first as someone worth following. That took time. That took effort, that took strategic relationship building, and in a matter of weeks, all of it evaporated. Because when realization happens of being manipulated, following doesn't just stop. Active warning of others happens. Opposition becomes the reality. The puppet master didn't just lose followers, enemies were created. Access was also lost. Doors that used to be open are closed now. Invitations that used to be received don't come anymore. Spaces that used to be occupied don't welcome anymore. People who used to be influenced don't return calls. Finding out is happening. What being on the outside is like. Being the one people talk about with concern. Being the one people avoid. Being the cautionary tale instead of the success story. And destruction is happening from this. The mob members lost respect. The ability to claim moral high ground was lost. The right to judge others was lost, because everyone knows what participation happened in. Everyone remembers who joined the attack. Everyone has receipts of what was said and done. And in moments when attempts happen to call out someone else's behavior, people can point to their own. Future credibility was compromised for temporary belonging. Bad trade. Some of them lost relationships that mattered, family members who were disappointed, old friends who couldn't believe participation would happen in something so vicious, romantic partners who saw a side they didn't like, children who asked uncomfortable questions about parental behavior. The consequences rippled beyond just the immediate situation. Everything got touched. The very things accused of you are manifesting in their own lives. The one who called you obsessed can't stop thinking about you. The one who said you were unstable is having public breakdowns. The one who claimed you were manipulative is being caught in their own schemes. The one who painted you as the problem is now the problem in every space entered. Everything projected onto you has become their reality. This is spiritual law in action. This is karma operating with surgical precision. This is divine justice that doesn't miss a single detail. Now look at you. Look at where you're standing. Look at what you've become through this fire. You're not the same person who entered this trial. Strength has increased. Wisdom has been gained. Discernment has sharpened. Protection has intensified. Power has multiplied. You're walking in a level of clarity and peace that most people never achieve, and everyone can see it, even your enemies. Especially your enemies. You didn't break. You didn't become what accusations claimed you were. You didn't sink to their level. You didn't fight dirty. Integrity was maintained when compromise would have been easier. Truth was chosen when lies would have been more convenient. Divine justice was trusted when human vengeance was available. And that choice positioned you for everything that's happening now. Your former student wants to reach out. Messages have been written that haven't been sent. Apologies have been rehearsed in mind. Scenarios have been imagined where forgiveness happens and everything goes back to normal. But knowledge exists that this won't happen. Some bridges burn beyond repair. Some trust once shattered can never be fully restored. Watching is happening of you thriving without them. Seeing is happening of you accessing levels that will never be reached by them. Observing is happening of you blessed in ways that don't make logical sense. And haunting is occurring from this, because being part of this could have happened. Celebrating with you instead of suffering alone could have been reality. Wrong choice was made, and living with that choice happens every single day. The puppet master is experiencing something worse than public shame. Irrelevance is being experienced. Nobody cares what thinking happens anymore. Nobody trusts what gets said. Nobody wants association. Power that was felt over narratives is gone. Influence that was wielded to control opinions has evaporated. Authority that was used to manipulate people has dissolved. Discovery is happening that when life gets built on lies and manipulation, eventual collapse happens and nothing real exists to fall back on. No authentic relationships, no genuine connections, no true allies, just reputation in ruins and consequences that can't be escaped. You're walking in victory that needs no announcement. Favor is being experienced that requires no explanation. Things are being built that speak louder than any defense you could have offered. People are being impacted in ways that vindicate you more thoroughly than any argument could have. Your life is the testimony. Your peace is the proof. Your growth is the evidence that everything said about you was a lie. Your former student is learning something that couldn't be learned any other way. That loyalty matters, that integrity is valuable, that authentic connection can't be replaced with strategic alliances, that betraying someone who genuinely loved you creates a spiritual debt that's painful to pay. Discovery is happening that what existed with you was rare, precious, irreplaceable, and destruction of it happened for approval from someone who never valued them. The puppet master is learning that control of everything isn't possible, that manipulation has limits, that when coming after someone chosen by God happens, forces beyond understanding get invoked. Power was built on deception, and that kind of power is temporary by nature. Constant maintenance is required, constant energy is needed, constant reinforcement is necessary. Eventually, keeping up couldn't happen. Eventually, truth caught up. Eventually, divine justice showed up. And now consequences are being faced that money can't fix and manipulation can't escape. You learned the most valuable lessons. Who you really are when everything gets stripped away was learned. What you're capable of surviving was discovered. That being misunderstood by many is better than being fake for acceptance was understood. That standing alone in truth is more powerful than standing with crowds in lies was comprehended. That chosen ones have protection that operates whether seen or not was realized. That divine timing is perfect even when delay feels present was grasped. You're stepping into the next season now, the one where doors open without you knocking, where opportunities appear without you applying, where favor shows up in ways that don't make logical sense, where people who tried to stop you watch you soar, where everything that was meant to destroy you becomes the foundation for your greatest testimony. Survival happened of what would have broken someone else. Integrity was maintained under pressure that would have corrupted others. Trust in God happened when circumstances screamed that alone was your reality. And now, right now, in this moment, everything is shifting. What felt stuck is moving. What felt blocked is opening. What felt impossible is becoming reality. Not because fighting for it happened, not because defending yourself occurred, not because proving anything was done, but because trust in the process existed, belief in divine justice was present, surrender of the battle to heaven happened, and heaven is responding in ways that make it clear to everyone watching that you were never the problem, that the accusations were false, that the campaign was coordinated, that you are exactly who you always were, someone chosen, someone protected, someone blessed, someone who cannot be stopped by human manipulation, no matter how sophisticated the attack. So let them watch. Let them regret. Let them suffer the consequences of choices made. You're not focused on them anymore. Focus exists on your assignment, your purpose, your calling, the people you're meant to impact, the things you're meant to build, the legacy you're meant to leave, because that's what chosen ones do. Attacks get survived and converted into testimonies. Betrayal gets endured and transformed into wisdom. Fire gets walked through, and emergence happens as refined gold that everyone recognizes as valuable. The performance is over. The puppet master has no audience. The mob has scattered. Your former student is drowning in regret. And you're walking into the season attempts were made to prevent. The blessing attempts were made to block. The destiny work was done to abort. But possibility didn't exist for that to happen. Because what God has for you is for you. What heaven has assigned to you cannot be reassigned. What you were chosen to accomplish cannot be stopped by human interference. You started surrounded by lies. Your ending surrounded by truth. You started with people singing against you. You're ending with people celebrating you. You started feeling isolated. You're ending feeling vindicated. You started questioning if survival would happen. You're ending knowing unstoppable is what you are. Everything that tried to bury you just planted you deeper. Everything that tried to stop you just positioned you better. Everything that came against you just set you up for a comeback that nobody can deny. Welcome to your vindication season, where everything shifts, where justice manifests, where karma completes its work, where divine protection becomes obvious to everyone, where your name gets cleared without you saying a word, where your character gets vindicated without you mounting a defense, where your future gets secured despite attempts to destroy it. This is what happens when you're chosen. This is what happens when heaven fights for you. This is what happens when trust in the process exists, even when seeing the outcome isn't possible. You win